Hey everybody, welcome to Don't Copy That Floppy, your weekly video game news podcast, broadcasting usually Fridays, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/DCTF podcast. You can find our show archives on our amazing host, chipbit.net, and also on iTunes and YouTube. I'm your host, Lex, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Booge.
It is January 26th. 2018. My goodness. It's 2018.
It's kind of hard to believe.
It's almost the end of the world.
2017 went by really fucking fast, at least for me.
For all the horrible things that happened, it still went by pretty fast.
I know. I'm like, well, what about 2016? We had a chance. There was time still.
Ooh. So we're going to talk about all sorts of news this week, a lot of shorter stories, but we'll be talking about a story from last week we didn't get to cover that I just wanted to this week because it's adorable and it's about Nintendo and cardboard. After that, we're going to be talking about Microsoft Gamepass, all of its ramifications. Followed by Sonic Designer getting a job at a different company, followed by God of War. It's a game that is happening, and there are more details on it. Followed by the creator of the original God of War having a hard time. Followed by Destiny 2 having a hard time. Followed by Destiny 2, a.k.a. Anthem having a hard time. Followed by Valve and Australia, the legal catfight going on there. And finally, we're going to talk about Fortnite and Paragon. And of course, we're going to round out the show by talking about games that just came out and games that are about to come out. Spoilers, that list will be very short.
Is it?
Well, it's still January.
Yeah.
And as they like to say on Red Letter Media, F you,
Fuck
it's
you,
January.
Fuck you, it's year.
It's year. Okay, so let's talk about cardboard, shall we?
Why not?
Why not? When's a bad time to talk about cardboard?
Never.
So, in an article from January 17th from The Verge, we are we have to read. There are words that are written
That's
about
how it goes. You okay there,
Yep.
Lex?
I'm dying.
Okay.
The Nintendo, the title of this article is Nintendo is making a bunch of weird DIY cardboard toys for the Switch, and they're awesome. And that pretty much sums up Nintendo's new project, Nintendo Labo.
Labo or Labo? I don't know if they say it.
Who cares? That's not the important thing. The horrible name is not the important thing. The important thing is that this is a product in which they are selling you cardboard for extremely large sums of money, considering it is cardboard, and also software that interacts with it for your Switch. And the idea here is that the cardboard has instructions on how to unfold it and create stuff with it. And then you basically put your controllers in certain places into this cardboard construction you have put together, and your Switch goes into it as well. And then there are games in which you interact with the cardboard, and it is reflected in the game that's happening on the Switch.
Yeah. You could have given me like 100 guesses of what Nintendo's next thing was, and this would have not been one of those 100.
No.
This is so out of left field. I mean, I guess it shouldn't be surprised. It's Nintendo. They're insane. They're crazy people that work there. But this is, it's interesting. It's obviously, it's designed for, or they say it's designed for children specifically, and that all their promotion shows children using it. But you know that there's your Nintendo fanboys out there who, you know, some of my asshole 4chan friends would probably call soy boys or something. But they're going to buy this shit up like crazy. You know, it's just like the same way that grown men buy Amiibo in the truckload. Mm-hmm. And good for them if you know, I have no problem with that. I think it's so silly. I forgot who said it. It was somebody in the games industry, but they're like, this finally proves that Nintendo can put their name on literally anything and people will buy it, including cardboard.
Some of the examples that we have here are a piano, which I thought was very inventive.
Yeah.
Also, some sort of weird little car robot thing that can move around, which not entirely sure how that's supposed to work, but it's cool.
Yeah.
I guess it's because the controller
It works by Nintendo magic. Is how it
Yeah,
works.
no, it's a lot of these seem like they work by magic.
Yeah.
Also, a fishing pole that you can construct, and then go fishing in a minigame. And it's not just that these are cardboard things you construct, and then like the Switch. I mean, I want to say if this was something that Microsoft had put out, it would be like something that would interact with the Kinect or whatever. But and in that case, it would just be a piece of cardboard that had some sort of like QR code on it or something weird like that, or like some sort of weird sensor, and then the camera would see that, and it would see it in the space and interact with it that way. But the way that the Switch interacts with the Labo stuff is like way more interesting than something like that. It's that the controllers have sensors in them, and you set them up in certain ways in coordination with these cardboard devices inside the cardboard devices, and then they read the movement in the devices in different ways.
Yeah.
So like the piano, you set up one of the controller halves with the sensor facing the inside of the box, and it can see which keys you're hitting, and that's how it knows to send the signal of those notes to the software.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's pretty. It's like an elegant but pretty smart idea, because they already have the like RF sensors or whatever in the controller. So really, it's software driven. It's not It's not cardboard driven.
Yeah.
It's just there's the cardboard's just acting as basically a feedback mechanism for the software, which is interesting. It's a very Nintendo way to go about it.
And some of these get really complex. I mean, the fishing pole is actually pretty complex just because it has the string and the like spool in it. But there's two different kinds of Labo sets. One of them is $60 and one of them is $80, I think.
So ridiculous.
And the bigger one is just a giant robot thing, and it's you make a they don't have any pictures of it on this article, but you make a backpack that has like pulleys inside of it, and then you're holding the controllers in. I think you have like cardboard gauntlets that you make, and you hold the controllers in that, and when you punch, it pulls on the string in the backpack, which interacts and like triggers the punch mechanism in the software. And then the robot follows your motions. And I'm like, this is so cool, not just because it's like a fun, quirky design, but because it gets complex enough, and the fact that the kids construct this, I think it could be used as like a really good teaching tool to get kids interested in stuff like mechanics and engineering at an early age.
Oh, sure. From a kid's perspective, this is all good stuff. Because most kids like building things, and they like video games, so you get to build something and then, play with it in a video game. Win-win.
Yeah.
But, like, from a parent's side, it'd be like, I'm spending how much for cardboard on top of the Switch that I already bought you last Christmas? Like, that's a big ask,
Now,
Because, I wonder, I mean, I'm sure that it's high-quality cardboard, but, like, what if the dumb kid goes running through his room and fucking steps on it? It's like, whoops, there goes $60, I guess. Like,
well, that's the thing, right? I think what you're really paying for is you're really paying for the software.
Sure.
And I assume that with the cardboard, probably one of the things that they will do, or at least that like people online will do, is the cardboard are just like sheets of cardboard that have the places where you're supposed to cut it out and like punch it out drawn on them. What I assume people will do is be like, oh, here's like a template that you can just print.
Just print the damn thing.
Yeah, so that you can remake these things if they fall apart for any reason, but you still have the software, and that's really the part that matters.
Right.
Because the software, I think, also shows you how to put the cardboard together. It's not just like paper instructions. There's actually walkthrough like video instructions, which, again, for kids, really good idea.
Yeah, totally. But, yeah, it's a very Nintendo move. This whole thing is very Nintendo.
But this was just like a beautiful little story that, I mean, it happened last week, but we didn't get to talk about it because we were off last week, and I just really wanted to talk about it because we get so few of these feel-good stories.
Feel-good cardboard stories.
Feel-good cardboard. So... And I mean, the next story isn't a feel bad story, but we certainly will be doing some of those later in the show.
Yeah. The
But
next
let's.
story is, I mean, well, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah.
No, no, you can intro it if you want. Go for it.
I think, okay, so the story is Microsoft's Xbox game subscription will include the next Halo, Gears of War, and Forza on launch day. Basically, Microsoft has this thing called Gamepass. That is basically like a subscription-based service, very similar to Netflix. I think Sony has one too called PS Now. And basically, you pay a small flat monthly fee, and you are allowed to download from a library of games without buying the games. You just it's like Netflix. You just watch what you want. You play what you want as long as you have the subscription. Well, they have recently announced, and I didn't read through all of this particular story because I already read a different story about it earlier in the week, so there might be some other little tidbits. But they announced that they're going to start releasing their first-party titles day and date with the physical version on the Game Pass service. And I think this is not just the biggest news of the week. This is perhaps some of the biggest news, potentially some of the biggest news in the video game industry of the last 10 years. This has the potential to change the way people pay for games. If this gets big, if this is big enough, this has a potential to change the way people pay for games forever. And it's something that I've been desperately waiting for a very, very long time. I know a lot of people have. So what do you think about it, Lex?
I think that you're partly right. I think it's gonna do that if two things happen. If other companies follow their lead and introduce programs like this, like if Sony starts doing this with their thing, if Nintendo decides to introduce a similar thing, and if they have not just exclusives on it. I mean, it technically it has non-exclusives on it right now, but those are all the older games. The ones that are actually launching on launch date are all the exclusives. Yeah. And like right now, Microsoft's exclusive lineup is like not that great because we don't know when the next Gears of War game is coming out, do we? We definitely have no idea when the next Halo game is coming out. That's just like in the wind. No. Forza is, I think, more of a set thing, but right now the games that are actually set things that are coming soon is like Forza, the new Crackdown game that people have already decided is not good, and there was like another one too. Oh, Sea of Thieves. Actually, Sea of Thieves looks really good. So hopefully that game will take off, and then this will be like a big stepping stone for it to get played by the maximum number of people. But
sure.
But yeah, so I think that it's at this point they've got the perfect system in place, and now they just need to make sure they get the right content on it.
Yes, and this is, I mean, in no uncertain terms, this is an incredibly bold move from Microsoft. This is huge. This is a huge gambit for them, and one that I think will pay off. But like, yeah, you're completely right. This idea can't exist on first party stuff alone. That'd be like Netflix only surviving on the stuff that it produces.
Yeah,
you need, Star Trek: The Next Generation and all fucking 100 seasons of it or whatever.
Just Star Trek Next Generation though, maybe X-Files too, but nothing else.
Yeah. Although I've been regrettably watching all of Mad Men recently for some reason.
Sure,
it's very boring. It's a boring show. But the thing is, if it takes off and if they make a shit ton of money out of this, that Sony's gonna be like, well, we should probably do the same thing. And there's already been rumors that Nintendo is planning on doing something like this for their back catalog, for their virtual console, where you'll just pay a subscription fee and you can play their entire back catalog instead of having to buy all of those games again for the 12th time, which I think would be a great idea as well. Although knowing Nintendo, they'll probably just make cardboard versions of their Super Nintendo games or something. But the thing is, yeah, because basically if everyone kind of goes that way, then the obvious discussion, and also if Valve ended up doing something like this, would be huge. The discussion would shift from how do we make this work with third parties, because they're going to be the ones that hold out the longest, obviously, because Rockstar is going to look at it and be like, no, we make billions and billions of dollars. We don't need any of you. Like, we don't need anything you do. You rely on us. And Blizzard can do the same thing to a certain degree. EA can do the same thing, and Ubisoft and those guys. But if they can somehow get on board with this and somehow work out a pricing format that works for them, the first company that grabs that, we're off to the races. Like the brick and mortar industry is dead. Digital stores are dead. It's just going to go right to streaming services, and which is what I want, because, and we haven't actually talked like the pricing here. The Game Pass is $10 a month, and I think they're also doing a bundle for $60 for a year, I think, or something like that.
For the price of one game, you can play games for an entire year.
For an entire year. Now, there is the catch that you also need Xbox Live to do this, so you're paying for that as well.
How much is Xbox Live a month? I can't remember.
I don't know. For silver, I don't think it's that much. Gold is the one with all the extra bennies that I think costs a little bit.
Because I was going to say, if it's like... Sorry, I'm going to let you get to your thought in a sec. But I was going to say, if Xbox Live is $5 for like a basic thing, and then this is 10, isn't that's still like the same price as Netflix, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Or like Amazon Prime, all that stuff.
Yep.
And that's not that expensive. And here's the thing: is that I just wonder how much money they can make from this. I'm sure that they have, their legal and their expenses teams combing through this and figuring out how much they can make, exactly. And it's probably enough if they're making this jump. But it's interesting because then we can, as like people like us, pundits in the game industry, not actual people in the industry, we no longer, if it takes off and everyone does this, and this is all hypothetical, but at that point, we no longer have any idea how well games do financially, and we can no longer use that metric to describe how well a game does. Because just like Netflix, you can bet your bottom dollar that Microsoft is never going to tell you how often a game is played. Like, you look at Netflix and they're like, oh yeah, House of Cards does really well. They're like, how many people watch it? They're like, we're not going to tell you. And we're not going to tell you how much money we make either. It's a lot, and we're not going to tell you. Like... It's genius, and I think that's the same kind of thing that'll happen with games, which will probably, I think, actually change the discussion around games for the better, because no longer will people be able to talk about how much money a game made in regards to how good that game is. They're just going to be talking about how good is the game.
You know what I think the metric will probably become is going to be how many people are streaming it and how many people are tuning in to watch streams.
Oh, sure. That's already the case, really. I mean,
yeah, that's already how we measure a lot of things. We're actually going to talk about that later in the show for some other stuff. But
this thing, there is one, and it's tied to some like Sea of Thieves and Crackdown, and potentially a lot of other games. If this kind of system takes off and everyone adopts it, and I was thinking about this, like you look at Netflix. When Netflix drops one of its shows out of nowhere, they seem to come out of nowhere. Like House of Cards or Stranger Things or whatever, or like one of their comedy specials, when they drop like Stranger Things, that's all everyone's talking about for like the next couple weeks, as everybody watches it. When they do same thing with House of Cards or whatever else, and it becomes like the water cooler talk. Everyone's watching it, everyone's talking about it, and it becomes a big like popular thing. I think it can change the discussion around games to something like that. And I look at Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves looks really fun and really interesting as long as you have like enough people that you're playing with. It seems like you kind of have to have a core group of people. But I look at that game and I'm like, I would really like to play that, but not for $40. Like that's not $40 worth of fun to me. However, if I just pay $10 a month for the subscription, that's something that I'll very easily be like, oh well, I'm already paying for the subscription. Hell yeah, I'll play Sea of Thieves, and a couple of my friends have it too. So yeah, we'll play. And all of a sudden, Sea of Thieves becomes like that season of House of Cards or something, where everyone's talking about it for a couple weeks instead of no one talking about it because no one bought it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think like you can look at a very similar thing happen with Rocket League. Rocket League made a deal with Sony back when it was coming out. Instead of making itself basically selling itself per unit for a certain price, they made a deal with Sony where they got a lump sum, and Sony gave Rocket League away to anyone that had a PS Plus subscription. So you could just get Rocket League for a couple months. It was in the summer when it came out, and it blew up because people probably wouldn't buy Rocket League for the ticket price, but they're like, oh, I'm already paying for PS Plus, so I'll just download it. Holy shit, this game's really fun. And it blew up, and it did incredibly well, and it still does incredibly well because they made that bet. And I think if this kind of thing takes off the way that I think it could, it'll change the discussion around games, and it'll work more like when someone talks about like Mindhunter on Netflix or some show on Amazon or something like that, and it becomes the cultural zeitgeist for a little bit, and perhaps games that were good, but no one would have played because they didn't want to pay the $40, become really popular because people are going to play them anyways.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Now we're happy about this and excited about it, and we think it's a bold move. And there are probably a lot of gamers who are rightly happy about this, and there's a lot of other pundits and analysts who are very excited about what this could mean for Microsoft, and I'm sure Microsoft's very happy about it. But there is one group of people who are very upset about this.
Oh, down under. Like they got some Vegemite stuck in the pan.
No. This is Austrian, not Australian.
Oh shit! I misread that when I was reading the story.
Sorry. We are going to talk about Australia later, though. For I think that's
the problem. I think I saw they're too close together, and I mixed them up because I was going to be like, man, Australia's just like a hellhole for video games. But apparently, got more than one. So,
in an article from neowin.net, I don't know this site very well, but they from January 25th, yesterday. Angered by Gamepass perks, Austrian retailer drops Xbox from store. So here's the thing. Brick and mortar stores, as you were saying earlier, are actually have the most to lose with Game Pass taking off. Because the whole deal with selling consoles is usually consoles get sold at a loss, especially like non-Nintendo consoles. Because the idea is that the games will sell so well that that money will be made back. I mean, there were reports about Microsoft, but also specifically PlayStation and the PS4, and how, like, even though it sold like gangbusters, I think it still took like 6 months or something to actually turn a profit. Yeah. It was crazy to me that that's how that system works. But so now this store, and I think and a lot of other ones are like grumbling about it, but the store is one of the only ones that's like doing something about it and taking a hardline stance. But they're basically saying, okay, so you, Microsoft, you want us to sell these consoles at a loss, and you still need us to sell the consoles because you can't have somebody download that, but no one will buy their games at our store, so we're not going to make any money off of the games. So how is this, like, why should we work with you at all? Because all we're going to do with you is lose money. Yeah. And that's not actually an unfair thing for the store to say, I would say.
Yeah, it's not unfair for them to say it, but I'm kind of have to take a too bad, so sad approach. Like, brick and mortar stores, not even just video game stores, but brick and mortar stores in general are dying. They're in a death spiral.
Yeah.
And it's been that way for a while. And so it's like, maybe you should have gotten out of the business. Like, not to take a Republican stance on this shit, but it's just like, it's not the market's problem. It's not the economy's problem that you are in a dying business. Like, you have to move with the market and move with market changes. And if you're not, then too bad, so sad. Like, it's just how it works.
We have some quotes from this is Gameware KG is the name of this retailer. Mm-hmm. And they say that Microsoft consoles, which bring zero profit and only expenditure if Microsoft alone then wants to profit off of the sales of software. If you want to do business alone, you should do the work alone. So yeah, they're saying, like, we're not going to work to sell your consoles if we're not seeing any benefit from that.
Yeah. They have the right to do that, I assume, under Austrian law.
We don't actually know too much about Austrian law. We know a lot more about Australian law.
Yes, we do. No, it's... I mean, that's their choice, but I think it's a wrong choice. Wrong choice.
Wrong choice. Yeah. Apparently, the blah 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 blah. What is it? Microsoft has worked with people like GameStop to offer. I think GameStop offers like Microsoft Game Pass like subscription cards or something, because GameStop loves offering you subscriptions to things.
Oh yes.
So they worked out a deal with Microsoft to offer these subscription cards so that instead of paying the $10 a month directly to Microsoft, people are like going into GameStop and getting like, I think maybe a discount or something by getting it through them. Which is
they get to enjoy the horrible experience of going into a GameStop anywhere in the country.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, I'm sure that'll work from the get-go because people are going to get like the 6 months free kind of deal. But eventually I think people are going to start realizing, oh, if I just give my money directly to Microsoft, I don't have to get off my couch.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
yeah, no, and if you're a gamer, I think you're much more persuaded by that argument.
Right, because I can spend more time playing the game I want to play.
Yes.
And not spend money on gas and go potentially driving through like a snowstorm or something.
Yep. Not to mention the fact that you'd have to deal with GameStop.
Right, you'd have to be inside a GameStop.
Yeah, even if GameStop was like a lovely customer experience, which it isn't. But even if it was, I still don't think that people would go for that in the long run.
Yeah, I'd need to like be getting a constant blowjob while in a GameStop to make it worth my time.
Whoa. Not an inaccurate assessment.
I know. But the thing is, it's like and that's the thing. Like if you see that GameStop is having trouble, can only imagine that GameWare KG is not long for the world. Like there will always be people that buy digital media because they like it. There's always going to be weirdos like you that want to buy outdated technology. Lex. Mm-hmm. And so there'll always be a place for that. People love those collector's edition. Some people still like doing midnight release stuff. So I can see, like, I know we've talked about it before, but a lot of mom and pop video game stores kind of turning into like hobby and specialty video game stores where they sell, used stuff or vintage stuff or, hard to find things. They do trade-ins and stuff like that. I think that's the only way that you can really survive in this kind of economy of games nowadays.
Yep, totally.
You should probably go that way.
Mm-hmm. So let's, now that we've gotten those big stories out of the way, let's talk about some of our smaller stories for the day.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a quick one from Engadget. Yuji Naka, who was the original programmer for the Sonic games, joins Square Enix. So he's actually the co-designer. Yuji Naka has joined Square Enix. He'll continue to pursue game development, but he isn't exactly dropping many hints as to what's next. Naka wants to make a quote-unquote enjoyable game, unlike the Sonic games, which sounds like a good goal to shoot for. It's not clear what will happen to his game studio, Prope, with the change in career path. He started in Sega in '83 and developed a reputation for his programming skills, which provided instrumental to the games like Sonic. Game's signature loops and curves were the result of his work. He eventually became a producer who managed titles like Nights into Dreams and Phantasy Star Online.
Ooh.
Good games. He left to form his company Prope in 2006 because he wanted to make his own games that weren't Sonic related. Good for him. And now he's at Square Enix. Who the hell knows what for?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's as soon as I heard his other credentials, I'm like, oh yeah, this guy could be pretty cool.
Oh yeah, no, he's not the sole reason why the Sonic games are absolute garbage fire trash.
Chris has very strong feelings about the Sonic franchise.
I just like stirring the pot for all the Sonic fans out there.
But no, I think it's interesting because when I saw this article, I just thought of the game designer from Mega Man, and how he was like, I'll just make my own company and I'll make my own Mega Man game, and that didn't work out so well for him.
Didn't work out great. No, yeah. I forgot his name, but he made he went on to go make Mighty Number 9. Disappointed. Those pizza explosions,
anime fans on prom night. Well,
yeah, anime fans on prom night. Oof. And there was weird shit like while that game was still being made, he launched another Kickstarter for like another Mega Man type game called like Red Dust or something.
He did. That's true.
And I forgot the name of his company, but that was a whole pile of garbage.
Yep. So God of War. It officially has a release date as of, the story was updated today, but I'm pretty sure the story came out a day or a couple days ago.
I don't think that the release date changed in the update.
Probably not, although that would be really unfortunate if it did.
That would be. It'd be like, we had to delay it already.
So God of War is going to be launching on PlayStation 4 on April 20th.
Woo.
Yeah.
Snore. I don't care about God of War.
Are you kidding? That game looks freaking great.
Well, it looks like a lot of money got burnt up in the creation of it.
Well, that too. But man, that game looks real good. I don't think I've seen a game trailer that's made me feel those kind of feels in a long time.
Yeah.
But,
I guess I've never cared about any of the God of Wars.
Well, that's the thing. I've never cared about any of the other God of Wars, and when I heard there was going to be a reboot to the franchise, I was like, and that it was going to be Norse mythology, I'm like, yeah, not going to watch that. And then during E3, the trailer just came up, and I'm like, wait, this is God of War? This is very different. This is like something that I'm interested in now.
Yeah, yeah. It looks like a kind of game that'll be fun to watch at like a high frame rate.
Yeah, definitely.
And like a 1080p or higher. And I'll be like, wow, that was fun to watch. Glad I didn't buy it.
But yeah, so that's kind of a cool thing that we finally know, and that it's not actually that far away.
Yeah, I mean, it's impressive. It's like the rumors of God of War 3 and the announcement of it. It seems like it's been around for a while, so good on them that they've nailed down a release date this year.
Mm-hmm. Now,
over at Santa Monica.
Yeah, the original God of War games that I was never interested in and you were never interested in were made by a man named David Jaffe.
David Taliesin Jaffe.
And he's not doing so well right now.
No, he's not. David Jaffe, this is from Destructoid. David Jaffe's game studio is going through some hard times. In some editorializing, another indie studio is enforced to lay off. This time, and the name of his studio is great, Bartlett Jones Supernatural Detective Agency. And this is the funny thing. I watched like some interviews with him. They actually do supernatural detective stuff. It's like in games, they're kind of like half and half as a company.
That's really weird.
It is, but David Jaffe's a weird man.
Right.
But his company's on the chopping block, helmed by industry legend David Jaffe, who worked or I think directed the Twisted Metal games, most of them, and the original God of War. I think the original 2 or 3 God of Wars.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it's going well for the Bartlett Jones Supernatural Detective Agency. He took to Twitter to inform fans that the staff had been laid off and that a potential project had been canceled. This is from David Jaffe himself. Wanted y'all to hear it from me before anyone else. We've had a project canceled, and we have been forced to lay off a vast majority of Bartlett Jones' staff gaming division. More news to come, but for now, that's what's up. Heartbreaking for the amazingly talented crew that's out of work.
Okay, so before I comment on the substance of this, I just want to point out that this tweet is almost impossible to read.
It's very hard.
Because he's trying to fit in all the characters, so he's replaced all the words 2 and 4 with the numbers, but he's also like taken out spaces in a bunch of random places. But then the rest of it reads like normal English, so it's just like really, really difficult to read.
Yeah, it is. It's a bit tough. I think the only game that Bartlett Jones has put out was a game called Drawn to Death, which was a third-person shooter that had a cool look to it, if anything. I don't know how well it played. It kind of looked like a little outdated in terms of like the style of gameplay, but it basically looked like a teenager sketchpad, or was supposed to look like that. Mm-hmm. Or I should say, it looked like a teenager's sketchpad from the late 90s. And yeah, so that's sad. It always sucks when indie studios get the shaft. But I guess Drawn to Death just wasn't doing good enough. Or the detective work. Maybe the supernatural detective work wasn't doing well.
Yeah, for some reason the supernatural detective work didn't pan out.
I know.
But yeah, I hope that David Jaffe can get back on his feet and maybe just be a little less weird. I don't know what to tell you.
I don't think that's possible. Not for him.
I mean, it's funny because being weird, like, with Twisted Metal served him pretty well. But Twisted Metal is such a product of its era, right?
Oh, sure.
Like, it feels like it fits really well in, like, the era when like, the first 3D Mortal Kombat game was coming out and, like, stuff like that. But like Drawn to Death also feels like it should be in that era, and that's like not how games are anymore. But it's confusing to me because God of War, it's a hyper masculine and violent game, sort of similar to Twisted Metal, kind of. Mm-hmm. But it also felt like with Twisted Metal, that was a product of the era, and then God of War was Jaffe changing with the times and making something that was a product of that era. And then with Drawn to Death, it feels like he just backtracked to his original work. And I'm like, no, that's such a bad idea. Never do that in this industry.
Yeah, never. No, and honestly, like, I think God of War, the old ones are... I think that, we were talking about the new one that's coming out soon. I think even that is a showing of how dated the old God of Wars could be, because, like, I never played them, but like Kratos is not a character. He's just an anger vessel, like in those games.
It's the gameplay in the original God of War is interesting. And
Yeah.
like really smooth, well, maybe not smooth, but it was for the time it was smooth. And
Popularized quick time events.
yeah, and it was well put together. But
No.
yeah, that's just not it's not something that's aged well, which is why I'm glad with the new God of War game they just went in a totally different direction for it.
They realize that people like to have an emotional core and actually have some complexity in their characters and shit like that. So they gave him a son to yell at.
So that's a sad thing for him, but yeah, I hope he can get back on his feet.
I'm sure he'll come up with something new.
Yeah. So let's talk about something I hope doesn't get back up on its feet. Destiny 2. So Destiny 2 is not doing as well as it could be. And I think it's pretty easy to say that that's mostly due to all of the negative press they've gotten lately. I mean, a lot of their negative press was happening at the same time as the Star Wars Battlefront 2 negative press, and the Star Wars stuff eclipsed it significantly. But the Destiny 2 stuff was still real bad for their community because a lot of it was locking content behind paywalls that had originally been in the game and just having less options than you had in the previous game. And people were really upset about it, and it didn't seem like Activision really addressed those concerns in a meaningful way. And the results of that are that a lot less people are watching and subsequently streaming Destiny 2 online.
There you go. That's that almighty mitigate, like the balance on how you see how good a game is.
Yep, and because of that, investment companies are taking notice of it and basically saying, "Hey, investors, maybe don't invest in Activision." Because one of their flagship titles is like running out of steam really fast.
Yeah.
Which is and that kind of sort of vote of non-confidence in the stock market is gonna hurt Activision's stocks. So
yes,
that they must be very unhappy about that.
I'm sure Bobby Kotick is shitting in his golden britches right now. And he's like, "No, I must dive into my pit of money." It's indicative of. I think it's indicative of it's backlash from the loot box apocalypse that happened a couple months ago, and we're just seeing like the kind of the after effects now, the ripples still flowing out from that.
Yeah, man. Too bad. They goofed it up.
Too bad. They goofed.
They goofed it up. I was actually reading a thing the other day that was about how EA's stock prices have bounced back.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure they're happy about because they're making money off of that. But at the same time, I don't think Star Wars Battlefront 2's sales have bounced back. So overall, they still lost some significant money in that controversy.
But I feel like, I don't know if this is 100% true, but I feel like EA is a more diversified company than Activision is. Like, Activision seems to have its big-ass tent poles that it really rallies around. But it seems like EA has more hands and more pots of soup, you know, because they're always going to have that Pele money. Like, they're always going to have that FIFA.
That's true, know? Yeah. Those sports games are really hard to screw up and very lucrative.
Yes, and they do very, 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 very well. And it seems like they just have more kind of things going for them.
I found a story that I just want to mention because it's not technically it's an older story that I just didn't see when it happened in October. But apparently, Activision's stock prices went down in October because an investment firm was like, "Hey, that Overwatch League thing that's happening, we're unsure if that's a good idea or not. So maybe be careful of investing in Activision Blizzard."
Oh my god!
And that caused their stocks to have like a dip. And I saw that article and I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
Oh, which reminds me, I'm bummed out that we didn't broadcast last week because we could have given all of the end results on all those sporting events.
Oh yeah.
But at this point, it's too late.
I know at the time I said I was like, "Oh yeah, I think I'm going to check that out." I didn't check it out. I had too much Next Generation to watch. Okay.
Engage. Let's engage with the next. Let's engage with the next story that is also about Destiny, just the Destiny that's called Anthem.
Get Destiny off the bridge. So this is a story that comes from the great, the I was going to say the late and great, but he's not dead. He's alive. The great Jason Schreier. And it's basically it's a long story. I'm going to read some parts of it, not the whole thing because it is a long story. You should read it all yourself if you're interested. But it's basically about how BioWare is really they're really doubling down and really like all in on Anthem. Seems like if it doesn't work, it's going to be bad. So here's a couple passages. Over the past few months, BioWare has essentially transformed into a single game studio as it harnesses its teams to work on the ambitious multiplayer action game Anthem, sources say. There are still small teams maintaining Star Wars The Old Republic and piecing together the next Dragon Age, which was recently rebooted, but the bulk of BioWare staff is in both Edmonton and Austin are now on Anthem, and there's a sense among BioWare employees that the company's future is inextricably tied to the game. Anthem, which was announced at E3 2017, is now scheduled for release in early 2019. According to the three people familiar with this project, the fall 2018 window mentioned during the E3 announcement was quote-unquote never realistic, one source said. Exact dates remain in flux, and Anthem's developers must also plan for a beta release, a EA Access launch, and an ongoing schedule of patches and updates, but it appears unlikely to developers that the publisher EA will allow BioWare's to delay the game any further than March 2019, when the company's 2019 fiscal year will come to an end. EA, like most publicly traded companies, uses the fiscal calendar on a basis for all as a basis for all of its decision, as those dates determine how investors will behave. He goes on to talk about how it's not unusual for BioWare to pull staff from other projects as it enters the final years of production on a game. They've done the same for Mass Effect Andromeda and Dragon Age Inquisition, but Anthem, the studio's first new franchise in 8 years, and EA's first big stab at the Destiny-style persistent online world, feels different. To BioWare staff, the stakes feel higher than they ever have. As one developer told me, there's a belief that if Anthem doesn't live up to EA's expectations, BioWare will look very different in the future, especially after the disappointment of Mass Effect Andromeda led EA to absorbing BioWare Montreal into the studio EA motive. And they talk about how they've ramped up on Anthem, and they've ramped up production on it, and it seems that most of the team at BioWare is saying, like, at one point it really felt like the game was going to be completely screwed, and now they're more like it's not screwed, but it's just going to be a long haul to really finish it in time. They also mentioned something interesting. Jason Schreier's sources talked about this, and he says, and then there's the toxicity problem. As video game pundits seize any opportunity to stoke anger at big publishers, two people have worked on Anthem both expressed anxiety to me about the way some big YouTubers have spread misinformation and inflammatory rhetoric about EA, saying that it has a demoralizing effect on those people at the ground level. To people who work for EA, the publisher isn't just a cold corporate master. It's a complicated machine that, yes, is concerned first and foremost with generating revenue for its investors, but also supports thousands of people in many tangible and intangible ways. People close to BioWare, along with many other developers I've talked to in recent months, worry that the commentary for some YouTubers' loudest voices has eliminated nuance and made companies like EA seem like Disney villains. Really interesting read, this whole thing. Once again, Jason Schreier does it. He's one of the only guys actually doing journalism out there in the video game industry. And it more and more seems like BioWare, it's like this is basically it for BioWare. If they can't nail this, they're probably pretty screwed. Like that, they probably won't be the BioWare we know afterwards if this thing doesn't pay off for them. And I think, unfortunately, as much as I root for BioWare, I always have, because even when they fuck up, I think they're an interesting company that's been allowed to exist for as long as they have. But I think it was the wrong horse to bet on. Like you were saying before in that last article about Destiny, I think that the Destiny shooter era is over. Like, we're moving through popular genres very quickly in the video game industry nowadays. You know, it's like there was the MOBAs and everyone tried to grab onto that, and then there was like the MOBA hybrid like hero shooters, everyone tried to grab onto that. That was over, and then it went over to, you know, the Destiny type stuff like that and the Division. Everyone tried to get those persistent online worlds going. that's passing out Battle Royale, and that's the only thing anyone cares about. And I feel like trying to hitch your wagon to the Destiny thing, it's too late. Like, I don't think it's going to make a big splash when it comes out.
Yeah, no, it's way too late for that, and that's why it's. See, I was gonna say, you were saying that after this, it's not going to be the BioWare we know, and I would make the argument that, with Andromeda coming out, it already was a BioWare that I didn't recognize.
Yeah.
And I think that their insistence on wanting to make this game, even when it was first announced, was a baffling move to me from BioWare, who is a company who in the past has been innovative and led the pack in genre games, and are now and with Anthem they're saying, well, why don't we just try to cash in on a trend?
Sure.
And
I'm sure it'll still be a good game.
Oh, but it probably will be. It's just not going to be like, I think it's not going to be a massive success. I think it's going to be a fairly well-liked game that some people will play, and that's going to be it. So it's, and that's not enough for what BioWare needs it to be and what EA needs it to be. So that's, no,
they
but
want it to be Destiny.
but when they announced Anthem, I was just so shocked and disappointed that announcement would come out of BioWare.
Yeah. Especially because, like, specifically, I guess, once again, like you said, they're not exactly the BioWare that they have been for a long time, but one thing that they have never really focused on, or one thing that they've never been that great at, is combat. The thing they've always been great at is story, narrative, plot, writing in general, character development. The combat in their games have always been passable, but not like super good. Like, when you look at like Bungie is famous for good gunplay. Yep. Like they've always have. So of course it would make sense that they're like, okay, yeah, we're gonna make a shooter, but it's gonna be a big, shooter that's different in a lot of ways. I can't, like, putting like BioWare on this task of making a really gameplay heavy game is just bizarre to me. It doesn't seem like the right fit unless they rehired a bunch of people, which is possible, but it always seems strange to me ever since we heard about it.
And also I will point out the thing that he mentioned in the article about the demoralizing effect with online pundits and internet criticism and how people will pile on. I thought it was funny because you then follow that up by saying, oh yeah, and this was written by Schreier, one of the only real journalists in video games. And I'm like, oh yeah, there's your answer right there. Real journalists don't work in video games, and that's why there's one. There might be a couple other people.
There's a handful.
But that's why the conversations in video games always devolve into, this company is like a Disney villain, because serious people don't work in journalism in the video game industry.
That's very true. That's very true. Yeah. So we should give our hats off to the few that do.
Yeah, no, I give a lot of credit to Jason Schreier. And this article is extremely well written, as most of his articles are.
But he actually just came out with a book in like September about
really? That's interesting.
Called Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, and it's basically just like a deep dive investigation into the creation of a couple different games. I think Destiny was one of them, where he just got like unfettered access about how the games were made and the troubles they went through and all that shit. He got the scoops. He got the big scoops.
So on the one hand, I feel bad for the people working at BioWare and how they're getting super demoralized by people online being jerks. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't know what you were expecting from the game industry public. Yeah. Like, that's how they've always been.
It is.
And
it does suck. Like, because it must be just like such a ball buster to be like, you're working on this game that you think is really cool, like it's like when you work on any creative project, you get really into it and you're working with your friends and stuff or coworkers and you're like, yeah, we're really doing well. This is actually working really well. Yeah, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go get some lunch. I'm going to go watch my favorite YouTuber, and you open it up and they're like, this game is garbage and all the people hate the Jews. It's just like, whoa.
I was watching PewDiePie that day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then, like, what? You got to, like, go back to work after lunch. And it's like, how does that affect you? It's like, you got to sit back at your computer and be like, I guess I hate the Jews now. Like, because
I need to stop watching PewDiePie during lunch.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really ruining my lunch hour. But you know what I mean? Like, that's got to be a real, hit in the nuts to be just to just continue to have to work on this thing that you're going to work on for years, and people just to completely shit on it the entire time. Must be kind of a tough thing.
Yeah, no, I totally believe that's a really hard thing. But
I hope they do well because I think a good Bioware is good for the whole industry. We need a big story house that still makes games like Dragon Age and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the thing. If Anthem comes out and it actually has like an amazing narrative or an amazing approach to narrative, then I'll be like, you did it, BioWare. You did it.
You did it.
I just have very little confidence that that's what's going to happen.
Yeah,
but no, man. I'm sorry, guys, that work at BioWare. This was just a bad call on your part.
It's been a bad couple games. It's been an unfortunate couple games.
And yeah, oof. I mean, one of the things, the Old Republic didn't work out very well for them, but I still praise that game quite a bit for the storytelling. Man, that game actually has fantastic storytelling.
Yeah, for, like, at the time, nothing really had, and maybe even since, like, for an MMO, no game had really done story like that before. Yep. It worked.
Mm-hmm. So, we're gonna see what happens when
see what happens
when Destiny 3, Anthem comes out.
Destiny 3 might come out before Anthem does.
Ooh, ouch.
Well, not if EA has anything to say about it, then it might get pushed out. Now that's another problem, is that if it gets pushed out before it's done, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, that's also a death warrant right there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Australia, not Austria,
not
Australia. From article from Kotaku, Australia, from January 24th, but it might be a different day in Australia. I don't know. I think time runs backwards there. Isn't that how that works?
I think their calendars flush backwards, yeah.
Yes, that's how it works. So I think we reported on it when it originally happened, but Valve was sued by the Gaming Commission of Australia, the ACCC, which I forget what that stands for because it's been a while. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission.
Whoa.
And they won that lawsuit, which happened in August of 2014. So I think I did report on that. It was just in the earlier days of the podcast.
Yeah.
And the whole deal was that they were saying Valve did not make their refund policy clear to consumers, and it was deceptive in such a way that people weren't able to return games when they could have returned games because they didn't realize that they could return games. And it just enabled Valve to make more money off of them. And in Australia, they are interested I would say not even almost, but to a fault, they are interested in protecting their consumers in just a much more rabid way than the United States is.
Boy, are they.
That's what happens when you're on the other side of the world and everything runs backwards. So does your government. It just
does
got the opposite things.
You got kangaroos that can punch you in the streets. You got to make sure people are playing the right games.
Yeah. So they won this lawsuit, and it was, I think, a $3 million fine that was leveled against Valve. And Valve was like, heck no, we're going to appeal that. So they filed for appeal, and that took a couple of years. And then finally, the Australian court was like, nah, you can't appeal it. You still lost. Pay that money. And Valve's response to that, as of this week, was to say, heck no, we're going to try to appeal it again. So now they're taking the appeal to a higher court, literally the Australian High Court.
Yes. And
I'm just looking at this saying, Valve, it's $3 million. Just fucking pay it.
Oh, no way. Gabe needs that $3 million.
Valve makes so much money. They have so much money. They could easily pay this.
Well, 3 million Americans, what, like 20 million Australian or something?
Oh, that's the exchange rate. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. It's very strange. I bet that like Valve's lawyers already know if they're going to win or not, and they're just like dragging this out as long as possible because they can. I don't know. It's very strange. Like you said, it's only 3 million. I wonder if they're just trying to... Maybe they have a bad relationship with Australia or something.
I mean, they've had... I think there's been some other reports of them butting heads with that commission in the past.
Yeah. Well, video games has a bad relationship with Australia, to be fair.
Yes.
Doesn't it cost like $8,000 to buy a video game in Australia?
Yes, I was reading something about how the internet speeds in Australia are like notoriously bad. So
Oh, really?
they like I think it was related to the Game Pass stuff, and they were just like, yeah, too bad that's like not an option for Australians because they can't stream games because their internet isn't fast enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. It seems like Valve is just being a jerk about this,
Being
but
petty. Being a little petty about this.
yeah, being a little petty about this. So we'll see how that shakes out. Now, our last story.
The last story, after Fortnite's massive success, Epic, the game company, Epic shuts down Paragon. This is also from Jason Schreier, wouldn't you know it? This is a real quick one. Basically, Epic, who are the makers of the Unreal Engine, they have two kind of big concurrent games. One is Fortnite, which you may know for being the PUBG clone. The other was a game that came out in at least a couple years ago, Paragon, which is basically a MOBA of sorts. It was a MOBA that was on consoles, which kind of made it stand out, at least at its time of release. And they are shutting it down. They're shutting it all down. Shut it down. But they're kind of doing it in the right way, I think. This was from they released a statement about it, and they said, "We truly appreciate everything you've put into Paragon. We received many passionate ideas for where to take the game. The outpouring of thoughtful suggestions is another testament to this incredible community." And that was from a blog post on the Paragon team. They said, after careful consideration and many difficult internal debates, we feel there isn't a clear path for us to grow Paragon into a MOBA that retains enough players to be sustainable. We didn't execute well enough to deliver on the promise of Paragon. We have failed you, despite the team's incredibly hard work, and we are sorry. Came out in 2016, and the cool thing that they're doing, I think, or the real stand-up guy thing, is that they are giving you back all the money for the players that have played Paragon. They're giving them back all the money of everything that they've paid for the entire time they played the game. They're basically getting a full refund for anything that they bought in the game, which I think is a real stand-up move. And good on them for doing it.
Yeah.
But it's unfortunate. I never played Paragon. I really had no interest in it. I don't have interest in Fortnite either. But it goes to show you just how fucking rich Epic is that they can do that. Also, that they can can basically just lose one whole game and just be like, well, our PUBG clone is all we need. Like,
still making them money hand over fist, and
yeah,
even though it's like only a fraction of as popular as PUBG is.
Absolutely. It's so strange. It's such a strange world we live in that they worked on. I mean, they've been working on Fortnite forever and ever, and they finally released the full game, and it's like not that popular, and then they're like, oh, fuck it, let's just make like a quick a battle royale mode in the weekend, and then that comes out, and they're like, oh, this one's free, but then you can try the real game, right? And everyone's like, no, we just want to play the PUBG mode. Like, so fuck all your, like, talk about demoralizing for the team. They spent years and years and years working on this game, and then everyone's like, oh, I like the version better that's like the other game with the shooting. It's just amazing. So yeah.
Oh goodness. Okay. So games that just came out. What is it today? It's the 26th. So we had a bunch of games no one's ever heard of.
Well, the big one today was that came out today was the Dragon Ball Fighters.
Oh, I was looking at this past week, and I was like,
the past week.
This Digimon Cyber Sleuth.
We got that Cyber Sleuth. Kirby Battle Royale.
Yeah, that's something. Iconoclasts, whatever that is. But hey, it's coming out for the Vita.
It's a Metroidvania game that actually has some cool looking pixel art.
Oh, that's nice. And whatever. Moving to Dragon Ball Fighters.
Lost Sphere was something that a lot of people were excited about and were disappointed by. That's a Square Enix throwback JRPG.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But so Dragon Ball Fighter Z, I've watched a lot of gameplay of it, and I am very impressed because when I saw Xenoverse gameplay, I remember seeing that and thinking, oh, they actually did a really good job of nailing the art style in this cell shading. That's really impressive. Yeah. And then I saw Fighter Z, and I'm like, wait, no, they did it much better. Now it just looks like you're playing the show.
Exactly. It's the game that, I mean, I probably won't pay full price for it, but it's certainly something I'm interested in. If that shit would have came out when I was 15, I would have been like, yum yum, give it all to me now.
Oh yeah.
Like
Oh
I would have been
yeah.
all over shit.
Definitely. The I'm bummed it didn't come out on the Switch because that's what I want to play it on. But maybe it will get ported there at some point. I would be happy for that.
I can
But
see that happening.
the other big one today is Monster Hunter World.
Monhun World.
Yes, which I know. It's funny. Dan is playing. That was getting to his house at some point today via UPS, and he canceled all of the other stuff he would be doing this weekend so that he and also his wife could just play that all weekend.
They're big into the Monhun.
Oh yeah, they love Monster Hunter. He's very excited about it. And I'm sure he's having a lot of fun. Early reviews have been extremely positive. Apparently, it is a very, very good Monster Hunter game. And I'm glad because the Monster Hunter on modern consoles, great. Fantastic.
Yeah. No, I think that Monster Hunter, it's always been on the fringe there. Everyone knows a couple people who are really into Monster Hunter, you know. And I've just always been like, good for you. I don't know if I'll ever try it. This one, I think, will draw in more people just because it is a modern console, looks a little prettier, looks a little more streamlined than some of the other ones.
I mean, the fact that it's on the Xbone is definitely gonna get eyeballs on it that would have never seen it before.
Absolutely. I mean, that's once again to that Gamepass thing. Like that, if they were on that Gamepass, that's a perfect example of everyone. There's people like me and you. I assume. I don't know if you like Monster Hunter, but like, it's at least for people like me where it's like, man, I've always kind of wanted to try Monster Hunter. Well, I might as well try it. It's already
that would definitely be a thing that I would do because I'm not super into Monster Hunter, but I've always been like, I mean, if I'm already paying for it, might as well.
And I got 2 or 3 other friends that are playing it anyways, you know? Like, there you go. That's how that shit works.
It's pretty cool. So
get that money, Xbox. Sorry.
So today was actually a pretty big day. Coming up though, let's see. We have Dissidia Final Fantasy NT. I have no idea what that is.
Sure, why not?
We have EA Sports UFC 3 on the 2nd.
All right. I didn't even know they still made the UFC game.
Woof. Let's see. We have we have that Shadow of the Colossus remake is coming out on the 6th for PS4.
I heard that they didn't fix the controls.
Oh, so it just looks prettier but doesn't play any better.
Right.
That'll be super frustrating because that's one of those games that you try to go back and play it and you're just like, wow, I wish I didn't go back and try and play this.
Yeah, I wish it would have stayed golden in my memory.
Yeah, because like, man, those controls have not aged well at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I mean, there's some other interesting stuff coming up in the next next couple weeks. But
the Civilization expansions. I didn't know it was coming up that soon.
Yeah,
that looks fucking big and rad, and I'm cool. I'm a big Civ fan.
Civ is the best. One more turn. You keep telling yourself for 5 hours.
Yeah.
So that's all the news that was fit for us to talk about. You know, I realize now that the show is over that I totally forgot to put it to the lineup. And I think it's because it was from last week. But there was that David Cage story about his studio.
Oh,
so we're not going to talk about it now. Maybe we'll talk about it next week if there's like a development on it or something. But look up that story because woo.
Sexual harassment at David Cage's studio.
Yep.
Quantic Dream.
Oh no. But anyway, thank you everyone for listening. This has been Don't Copy That Floppy, weekly video game news podcast with your hosts Booj and Lex. If you want to support the show, you can find us on iTunes. You can leave us a rating and review, or you can find us on Patreon and give us some sweet dollars every month, and you will gain access to bonus content where Dan and I talk about stuff. We recorded bonus content this morning because the UPS truck had not arrived yet at Dan's house.
He had not been transported to the Monster Hunter world yet.
Correct. And we talked about Guillermo del Toro stuff because I have seen Shape of Water and it's amazing. And we also talked about our thoughts on the trailers for the new Pacific Rim, also on that Guillermo del Toro train. So
is he making that one?
Oh, I mean, if you want to find out, you're going to have to listen to our bonus content.
Oh, shit, Lex.
Or you could just go to IMDb and check.
Okay, yeah.
But anyway, yeah, thanks for listening. And until next time, Chris, what do people have to remember?
Don't copy that floppy.